Abeer, I mean, no talks underway. We're asking where the conflict goes from here. When do we expect details on that economic pressure that the US is threatening on Tehran?
That's a good question, Lizzie, a difficult one to answer, really. And then when we talk about the fact that there are no wider talks happening, that's according to President Trump, that's according to the official Iranian line. But then Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law, and who has been an active negotiator in these talks, did say that there are some active discussions happening with Iranians. So you're seeing that back and forth yet again in the statements by both the United States and Iran and officials there. But what really matters in all of this, Lizzie, is that the official line when it comes to what is happening between those two is that we just don't know, and we don't think that there are wider negotiations happening. What we do know, however, is that Oman and Iran are still in the final stages of talking about that pathway in the Strait of Hormuz to reopen it. But then physically what is happening on the ground is that the threat of those attacks in the waterway are still very much there, with the latest from the UK Navy yesterday saying that a vessel was hit in the Strait of Hormuz by an unidentified projectile, one casualty there. Just now, today, our energy teams reporting that 2 Chinese-flagged vessels had U-turned in the Strait of Hormuz and are now idle. And so you're seeing, as you have mentioned in your intro, movement in the Strait of Hormuz really a fraction of what it was pre-war, and then the prospects of that returning to normal anytime soon is, of course, dimming by the day.
And Abeer, we're just reporting right now that the United Arab Emirates says it's cutting all economic ties with Tehran, having accused Iran of firing ballistic missiles at its territory. What does it tell us about the wider relations in the Gulf region right now, how the tectonic plates are shifting?
Yeah, that's in focus one more time. Of course, the Gulf region had been the main victim of the Iranian retaliation at the start of this war, at least. That's calmed down slightly over the past couple of months. Of course, countries like Bahrain and Kuwait were still under attack. And yesterday in the evening here in Dubai, we all received ballistic missile threat alerts on our phones. The UAE Defense Ministry later on saying that it was targeted by 2 Iranian ballistic missiles. The Foreign Ministry, as you have mentioned, later on said that it was cutting all trade and financial transactions with Iran until further notice. And then Anwar Gargash, who is a senior advisor to the UAE's president, a very important diplomatic figure here, saying that news of providing financial facilities to Iran is untrue, unfounded. He was on X earlier on, just moments ago, as a matter of fact, reiterating that line. And so when you talk about the relationship between the Gulf and Iran generally, it's been in tatters since the start of this whole thing. Bearing in mind the geographies, however, perhaps the line from Jake Sullivan in an interview he did with Bloomberg yesterday, saying that maybe the Gulf will ultimately, or the region, countries in the region will ultimately have to come up with their own pacts with Iran to avoid being hit again. And that is something, of course, that is worth keeping an eye on, and something we will definitely be keeping an eye on in the coming days and weeks, Lizzie.